At the edge of the lake, just outside the school, is a 9-year-old buck-toothed boy named Ishaan. The boy uses a kind of coffee strainer to catch some tiny fish and puts them into his water bottle. When he least expects it, a man appears from behind him and grabs him by the shirt. This guy was the school bus driver, and he was impatient because he had wasted 10 minutes waiting for the boy. A short time later, when he arrives home, he is greeted by Sharu and Johnny. Ishaan throws his school report card for the dogs to devour, so that he would not have to give the document to his parents. After making sure that the paper had been destroyed, the boy enters the house and rushes to put the fish he has collected into the aquarium on top of the refrigerator. After a snack, Ishaan goes to his room and begins to put together a puzzle. Soon after, his brother Johan shows up and tells his mother that he got the highest grade in the class in all subjects. The woman is proud of the young man and asks her youngest son about his report card. Ishaan then leaves the room and goes outside to watch his neighbors play. During the game, the boys throw the ball away and ask Ishaan to fetch it. The boy promptly gets up and goes after the ball, but when he throws it back onto the field, the object ends up falling on the other side of the wall. At this time Ranjit, one of his neighbors, begins to shout and orders the boy to go and get the ball back. Startled, Ishaan becomes unresponsive and the kid goes after him. Even though he is much smaller than Ranjit, the boy decides to fight back, and the two of them roll on the ground as they get into a fight. Ranjit knocks Ishaan's head to the ground and grabs him by the neck, then tries to twist his arm. To defend himself, the boy bites that delinquent and he finally let him go. Then Ishaan runs out onto the terrace and starts to cry, but soon gets distracted and plays with a kite he finds lying there. Later, when he returns home, he comes across Ranjit and his mother complaining to his parents. They accuse Ishaan of starting the fight. Upon seeing the boy, his father slaps him across the face. At this moment, his neighbor invents even more lies and says that Ishaan even tore his shirt during the fight. Outraged at being wrongly accused, the boy attacks him and his parents have to separate them. When Ranjit and his mother leave, his father, Nankishore, says that Ishaan brings nothing but trouble to the family. Every day, they receive a new complaint about the boy, either from the school or from the neighbors. Then the man warns that if he receives any more complaints about him, he will send him to boarding school. After hearing his father's lecture, Ishaan's mother kneels in front of the boy and begins to tend to his wounds. She knows that Ranjit is a troublemaker and asks her son not to mess with him anymore. The next morning, the boy has to face another day of school. In the very first class, Irene, his teacher, asks Ishaan to read a sentence from the English book and indicate what the adjectives are. However, the boy cannot follow her instructions, because he has great difficulty in learning. Believing that this attitude is the result of Ishaan's disinterest, the woman kicks the boy out of her class. At the end of class, the boy returns to his classroom. One of his classmates asks if he did his math homework and if his parents signed his report card. Since Ishaan didn't manage to do his homework and didn't show his grades to his parents, he knew that he would be scolded once again, so he decides to take his things and leave. While everyone else is attending classes, the young man walks through the streets of his small town in India. That morning Ishaan meets several new places and new professions that he had never imagined existed. Without a doubt, for him, that walk was much more fruitful than any day at school, because while walking through the streets and observing the daily life of people, he could learn new things, which did not happen during class. At the end of school hours, Ishaan returns to school, waits for his classmates inside the bus, and goes home as if nothing happened. In the afternoon, his mother helps him with his homework, but is disappointed to see that the boy has not made any progress. The woman doesn't understand how Ishaan can keep misspelling when they practice together every day. She worries that her son might repeat the third grade again and fall behind his friends. During the night, Ishaan wakes his brother and tells him that he missed class that day. Ishaan then asks him to write a note to his teacher justifying the reason for his absence. Initially, Johan refuses to forge the note, but eventually gives in to his younger brother's insistence. The next day, his teacher reads the note that says Ishaan was sick, so he did not come to the last class. Then the woman decides to make a surprise math test. During the 30 minutes that the students have had to solve the questions, Ishaan is daydreaming in his thoughts. The boy creates a story in his own mind in which he is a space pilot and his mission is to take the third planet of the solar system, Earth, and drop it into the ninth planet, Pluto. In doing so, Pluto is destroyed and the Earth remains intact. Thus, the boy comes to the conclusion that 3 times 9 equals 3. The next morning, while eating, his father finds the forged note that Johan wrote to the teacher. He asks Maya, his wife, if she had written that note, and his wife says no. Ishaan realizes that he is in trouble. After getting a big scolding, his parents accompany him to the board of directors to clear up the misunderstanding. They learn that Ishaan has not been doing his assignments, much less his homework. His teachers say that reading and writing is like a punishment for him and claim that the boy never pays attention in class. Faced with all those complaints, the school principal says that if the situation remains like this, she will no longer be able to help Ishaan. The woman further suggests that perhaps the boy suffers from some intellectual disability and advises his parents to look for a special school for him. When they arrive home, Nankishore is determined to send his son to a boarding school. The man believes that only then will Ishaan become a disciplined young man. Maya tries to dissuade her husband from this idea, because she didn't want to be away from her son, but he is convinced that this is the best way out of that situation. Even in the face of Ishaan's pleas not to be sent away from his family, his father is unwilling to change his mind. The following week, the boy is taken to his new school. In the car, on the way home, Maya cries at having to separate from her youngest son and Johan tries to console her. Meanwhile, Ishaan feels abandoned and rejected by his family. During dinner, the boy can barely eat as he tries to process what is happening. At home, Maya finds one of her son's drawing notebooks. In it, the boy represents the moment he was separated from his family. Seeing this, the woman wonders, once again, if she made the right choice in leaving him in a boarding school. On the very first day of class, Ishaan's teacher orders him to sit at the first desk next to Rajan, the top student in the class. The man does this in the hope that Ishaan will be influenced by his classmate and also become a diligent student. Later, during art class, the boy is distracted looking at some birds through the window when Holkar throws a piece of chalk at his head. The man orders Ishaan to go to his desk and uses a ruler to slap his hand 5 times as punishment for not paying attention in class. In English class, the boy also gets into trouble. As Professor Sen explains the subject, the words on the board begin to jumble and Ishaan feels inferior to the rest of the class for not being able to keep up. After hearing his teachers call him dumb, lazy, and stupid so many times, the boy begins to believe it is all true. Now his imagination, which once allowed him to travel through space, begins to create horrible monsters to torment him. Little by little, that cheerful and spirited boy turns into an apathetic, depressed, and frightened child. On the weekend, when his parents show up to take him home, Ishaan can only cry and starts running around desperately. When he gets home, Johan gives him a collection of 24 paint colors because he knows that his brother loves to paint, but even this is not enough to cheer him up. On Sunday evening, when his parents take him back to boarding school, although he is very sad, Ishaan has no more tears to shed. All feelings had left the boy. All that remained was emptiness and indifference. The next morning, his friend, Rajan, finds him hanging from a ledge and is frightened. The boy asks him to get down from there and ends up falling to the ground. Then Ishaan comes down to help him and the boy informs him that Holkar has been transferred to another school and a new teacher has arrived to replace him. When all the students are gathered in the room waiting for the new teacher to arrive, they hear a flute sound and start searching for where the noise is coming from. Suddenly, a man dressed as a clown bursts into the room performing acrobatics and starts singing. All the students are excited by the approach and interact with him. Even Rajan, who had a broken leg, tries to join in the dance. However, Ishaan remains with his head down and does not show any reaction. After the show, Professor Ram distributes a blank sheet of paper to each of the students and asks them to draw or paint whatever they want. A few minutes later, the man goes to check on the progress of the artwork and realizes that Ishaan has not even started his drawing. Ram does not want to rush him and says that the boy can do everything in his own time. However, the class comes to an end and all the students are ready with their paintings, except Ishaan. Upon seeing this, the man's reaction is quite different from all the other teachers. Instead of being angry with the boy, Ram becomes worried about him. That evening, Ishaan receives a phone call from his mother. The woman informs him that she will not be able to pick him up next Saturday because Johan will be playing in the final of the tennis tournament. The woman tries to apologize, but the boy just leaves the phone on the table and walks away. The next day, during recess, Ram questions Rajan about the whereabouts of his friend. The boy claims not to know and tells him that Ishaan is not happy in that school. Rajan says that even though Ishaan tries very hard, he cannot read and write. The boy is always grounded and his notebooks are full of red markings. Upon hearing this, the man goes to the student's locker to take a look at the boy's notebooks and confirms that, indeed, Ishaan makes many spelling mistakes. But beyond that, he realizes something that apparently no one had noticed until then. After giving his classes at the boarding school, Ram heads to the other school where he works. He has been teaching special needs children for a few years, but on that day, the teacher is thrilled. Jabin, his coworker, sits down next to him and asks why Ram's eyes are full of tears, and the man reveals that after so many years, he came across himself as a child. The man realizes, looking into Ishaan's eyes, that the boy needs help. So he decides to pay a visit to his parents' home. When he arrives there, he is greeted by Maya, and after introducing himself, the woman invites him in. While looking through Ishaan's old notebooks, Ram finds a drawing and is amazed to discover that the boy can paint. Maya then shows some of the drawings made by her son and the teacher watches them carefully. Eventually, the man finds the notebook in which Ishaan draw the moment he was separated from his family and is amazed at the boy's sensitivity and creative ability. Ram asks the couple why they sent the boy to a boarding school, and Nankishore says that it was their only option, since Ishaan repeated last year and was not making any effort to improve in his studies. Upon hearing this, the professor asks if the couple has noticed that there is a pattern to Ishaan's mistakes. They say they have never noticed anything like this, so Ram shows them some markings that other teachers have made in the boy's notebooks. In this way, his parents could see that Ishaan confused some similar letters when writing. For others, he wrote them backwards. Thus, they were mirrored and impossible to understand. Ram explains that Ishaan has difficulty recognizing letters, so he cannot read or write properly. However, Nankishore says this is nonsense and claims that it is just an excuse not to study. Then Ram takes a box with words written in Chinese and asks the man to read. Nankishore says that he cannot read, because he does not know those symbols. But the teacher insists and asks him to concentrate. When the man again states that he cannot read, Ram accuses him of misbehavior and says that he is not trying hard enough. At this point, Nankishore understands perfectly what he has been doing with his son for the past few years. Then Ram explains that this difficulty Ishaan has in reading and writing is called dyslexia. However, this difficulty does not mean that the boy is stupid or dumb. In fact, his mind is much more vivid and sharper than that of most adults around him. This becomes totally clear through his drawings. Still, Nankishore is dissatisfied, because instead of looking at his son's great talent, he prefers to worry about the fact that Ishaan can never become the first in his class or be good at sports. Frustrated, Ram leaves and, with Maya's permission, takes the boy's notebook. The next day, before class starts, he shows Ishaan his own drawing and thus manages to attract the boy's attention. Then he begins to tell the whole class the story of a boy who could not read and write, no matter how hard he tried. Words were his enemy, they danced in front of his eyes and terrified him. Everyone made fun of him and called him lazy, until one day the young man turned around and presented his theory that changed the world. At the end of the story, Ram asks if the students know who this boy is, and Ishaan is startled, believing that his teacher is talking about him. However, he is surprised when the man shows him a picture of Albert Einstein, the genius who revolutionized science with his theory of relativity. Afterwards, the teacher shows the students a painting and asks them what they are looking at. They all answer that it is a drawing of a helicopter, so Ram reveals that that work was done by Leonardo da Vinci, 400 years before the first airplane existed. The teacher also tells them that Leonardo da Vinci had great difficulty in writing and shows in the painting how the painter wrote. At the end of the sentence, no one could understand anything, until Ram uses a mirror to reflect what was written the right way and the students get even more excited. Finally, he asks Ishaan to turn on the light and asks the students who it was that lit up the world with electricity. Promptly, Ishaan replies that it was Thomas Edison. After congratulating him, the teacher tells him that Edison could not read properly either. After introducing all these amazing personalities, Ram says that he is telling this to the students to show that among them are many hidden gems that changed history because they saw the world in a different way. In that class, the teacher proposes that they create something unique. The idea was to take materials and objects that they find in the trash or thrown on the ground and turn them into something unique. The teacher asks the students to gather around the lake and says that he wishes to speak to Ishaan. When everyone is out of the room, Ram reveals to the boy that when he was a child he also had difficulty learning and his father did not understand him. He thought Ram was lazy and didn't want to study, but despite this, he managed to overcome his difficulty and was now there teaching other children. Minutes later, at the edge of the lake, while the other boys were playing, Ishaan was using old materials to create something new. With the help of some twigs and pieces of wood, the boy creates a boat that can move on its own in the water. His teacher is proud, and after class he takes the object home and keeps it as a souvenir of that day. The next morning, Ram goes to the principal's office to talk about one of his students. Upon hearing that the subject was Ishaan, the man soon prepares himself to receive yet another complaint, for other teachers have also spoken ill of the boy. However, contrary to all his expectations, Ram says that Ishaan is an extremely intelligent boy. His only difficulty is in reading and writing due to dyslexia. After explaining in more detail about the learning disorder, the teacher shows the principal some of the paintings made by the boy and asks the man for an opportunity to help him. He proposes that, initially, the other teachers ignore his spelling errors and begin to assess Ishaan orally. Meanwhile, Ram will help him develop his reading and writing skills. The director buys the idea and Ram starts private lessons to help the boy. First, they do some spelling exercises in a creative way that stimulates Ishaan's sharp imagination. When the boy becomes able to recite the entire alphabet in the correct order, they move on to practice writing and pronouncing the words. Within a few weeks, Ishaan becomes able to read correctly and with ease. His math skills are also much better, and he stops confusing numbers. The school year was almost over, and to end the semester on a high note, Ram decides to set up an art competition for students and teachers from the whole school. Later, while Ram was teaching another class, Nankishore shows up and says he needs to talk to him. Back in the teacher's office, the man says that his wife did some research on the internet and read all about dyslexia. Ram questions why the man is telling him this, and Nankishore says that he doesn't want the professor to think that the couple doesn't care about their younger son. Hearing this, the teacher says that affection is very important and can heal a tormented soul. He says that loving gestures and words make the child feel loved. According to him, the most important thing for the development of a child is that the youngster knows that if he fails, his parents will be there to support him. Only then can the child feel secure and develop self-love. Upon hearing this, Nankishore is speechless and gets up to leave, but before he leaves, Ram asks if his wife has also read on the internet about the Solomon Islands. There, when the natives want a part of the forest for cultivation, they don't cut down the trees. Instead, they gather around them and shout until they can't stand it any longer. They curse them with their words, and in a matter of days these trees wither and die on their own. Shocked by the professor's words, Nankishore leaves. On his way out, he runs into his son and spots him from afar. Ishaan was reading the poster about the art contest and his father is thrilled to see it. The feeling of guilt overwhelms him and he does not have the courage to approach the boy. The next morning, before the sun has even risen, Ishaan wakes up and begins to get ready. The boy leaves his room while his classmates are still asleep and goes to the lake to watch the sunrise. A few hours later, the students gather in the amphitheater to participate in the competition. Even the principal and his wife show up at the event. Ram asks Rajan about Ishaan's whereabouts, but the boy tells him that his friend left before his classmates woke up. This news makes the teacher worried, but he cannot leave the other children to go look for the boy, so he decides to wait for him right there. The other teachers also show up to participate in the contest and are surprised to see their caricatures drawn by the students. A few minutes later, Lalitha Lajmi, Ram's teacher, appears and the man announces that she will be the juror who will choose the winning painting. The competition begins and everyone prepares to do their best in their art. Hours go by and Ram becomes increasingly worried about Ishaan's absence. But to his surprise, the boy arrives in time to participate in the contest. The teacher hands him a blank sheet of paper and the young man looks for a more secluded place to sit and create his work of art. Now that he is calmer, Ram is able to begin his painting. A few minutes later, Ishaan shows his painting to the professor, who is amazed by the richness of detail in the work. However, the boy is even more surprised when he realizes that Ram's painting illustrates his face with an extremely happy expression. A few hours later, the contest comes to an end and the director has the difficult task of announcing the winner. He says that Lalitha, his special guest, had to choose between two beautiful paintings. The result was a tie, but only one painting could be the winner, as it would be the cover of the school yearbook. So, in the end, the woman gave the win to a student and Ram came in second place. Everyone is curious to know who was the student who beat the teacher, and the principal announces that the winning artwork was Ishaan's. Shy, the boy hides amidst the applause, but his courage is renewed when he sees the proud look on his teacher's face and Ishaan takes the stage. After receiving the certificate, the boy is thrilled and runs into Ram's arms. At this point, the two embrace and begin to cry together with happiness. A few days later, the students' parents show up to take the kids home for the vacations with their families. When they arrive at school, Ishaan's parents are called to the principal's office and the principal shows them that the boy's painting has won the contest and has become the cover of the school yearbook. On the back cover was the painting done by Ram, and the couple is surprised to see their son's face printed in one of the school books. Next, Nankishore and Maya go to the teacher's room to receive Ishaan's report card. The couple is surprised to hear about their son's excellent progress and finds out that all this was made possible thanks to the help of Professor Ram. Before leaving, they go to talk to Ram and Nankishore embraces him. The man has no words to thank the teacher for the transformation he has caused in his son's life. Ram then says goodbye to Ishaan and says that he will miss him, but will be there when the boy returns from vacation. Then the boy accompanies his family to the car, but before he gets into the vehicle, he runs back into his teacher's arms.